bought a Mustang. Make sure you stick around to the end because I am issuing a challenge that I think is going to be a whole lot of fun. And more about that in just a little bit. So this is a 2007 Ford Mustang GT. It's the 4.6 liter V8 with a 5-speed manual transmission, and it is dirt cheap, like really, really cheap. And I think this might be the best bang for the buck, or one of the best bang for the buck cars you can get right now from a performance-y standpoint. So here's why I think this is actually a really, really good buy. Power per dollar. This engine has 300 horsepower and 320 foot-pounds of torque from the Ford Modular V8. This is it's an aluminum block, aluminum heads, and it's kind of an old-school engine, but this is I think the last version that they made. It's got the 3-valve head versus the 2-valve that the old 4.6s had. Is it fast? I mean, it is when you drive a Miata, usually, but fast by fast car standard, yeah, not really. But 320 foot-pounds of torque, that's not nothing, and it goes pretty good. I'm not mad about it. It's the fastest car I've owned from the street. That's really sad. Simplicity. There's not a whole lot going on in this car, from the suspension design, which I'm going to get into in a little bit, to just the lack of anything fancy whatsoever. It's really easy to work on, and the parts are cheap. Maintenance is cheap. They're pretty reliable, and there's just not a lot to break, honestly. And when it does, you can go to AutoZone, and they've got the parts for you right there. And finally, it's really expandable into kind of whatever you want, and that's what I really like about the Miata too. And I know it's weird to compare this to a Miata, but hear me out. So in a Miata, you can just drive it as a stock Miata and have 100 horsepower and floppy suspension and an open diff and all that kind of stuff, and you can have a blast. Or if you want to have the fastest car at any track day, you can do a big boost build or an LS swap and race suspension, big aero, all this kind of stuff, and have an incredible monster. Or you can do anything in between. The car can really be anything you want it to be. This car is actually kind of similar, not because it's lightweight and handles quite like a Miata, but because the aftermarket is so huge and you can really do kind of anything you want. No, it's never going to handle quite like a Miata, but it's already got a V8 in it, so you don't need to go through nearly the effort to get some straight line speed out of the car. So, it's always going to be some give and take. Okay, so here's what's terrible about this car. It is good at nothing. It's good at nothing. It doesn't turn. It doesn't stop. It kind of doesn't really go that well either, if we're being perfectly honest with ourselves. Not by modern standards, anyway. But it's cheap. It's cheap. You get so much for the money. And in some ways, follow me here, this car kind of fits in with the old Hachiroku Toyota 86, in that it is an inexpensive car that uses inexpensive components to get kind of a sports car-y result out of it. It's never going to be the ultimate performer, like something that has way more advanced suspension components and a higher revving engine that's, designed with performance in mind. Essentially, this runs out of steam at like 6,000 RPMs, and the suspension, it's a strut on the front, and it's a solid axle on the back. There's really nothing special here. So you can find a lot of things to not love about this car. But at the same time, with the 86, it's all the same, except that has an anemic 4-cylinder engine. So, yeah, you could try to point out all the things that are bad about it, which I just did, but you could also, try to find something more than the sum of its parts. That's why people love the 86 so much, and I think this car actually, I think if people gave it a chance, they'd like it a lot more than they think they do. Alright, let's get this thing up in the air and take a look at some of the suspension components here. I want to show you what I got to work with and where I'm going to be going with this car. So, why doesn't it stop? Because these are trash. Not the whole thing. Like, this is okay. It's, pretty typical. Like, I think it's a single piston. Oh, I'm wrong. It's a twin piston. 2-piston floating caliper with a vented disc. millimeters big. I don't know. Who cares? The problem here is the pads. It's whatever was on the car when I bought it from a wholesaler, and they feel like Duralast Golds. Basically, I got one braking zone into the skid pad at Streets of Willow before they just completely faded away. So, are they big enough for the car? Maybe not, but I'm going to try. So what I'm going to do is just swap the pads and the fluid out for something that's way more high temp and see what happens. I don't know. I think it'll be okay. I'm not going to be, hardcore racing the car, so I think just pads and fluid should be good enough for my purposes. And why doesn't it turn? Because of these. Strut suspension. I mean, that's not the only reason. But it's a good opportunity to talk about struts, so let's get into it. Alright, this is a little bit hard to see because there's all this bumper stuff in the way, but we'll do the best we can. So this is a strut. This is probably the most common suspension type in the world because it's cheap and because it's compact and it works well in transverse applications, and a manufacturer can just take one of these and copy paste the design and put it onto 13 other cars. So it's really cost effective for the manufacturer to use it. It's also used by BMW and Porsche for some goddamn reason that I have absolutely no idea. But, I mean, you can make them work. They're not as good as dual arms, but you can make them work. The important thing to look at here for the geometry of the suspension is the angle of the lower arm. Now this is at full droop right now. So you can see this lower arm here is pointed down towards the wheel. So if I were to use some movie magic and draw some lines on here, we can get an idea of exactly the arc this is going to go. Now this is in full droop. I'm going to jack this thing up and put it close to about static ride height. Might start lifting the car because the spring is still in here, but we'll go as high as we can. We'll watch the motion of that arm and how that's going to affect the handling of the car. Okay, I went as high as I could before the spring tension caused the actual frame of the car to be lifted. But let's take a look at the angle we've got now. This is more or less flat. Now keep in mind, when you're going into a corner, this is going to get compressed further and further up. This face here with the rotor, that's exactly the same angle, camber angle, that your wheel and tire are going to be at. So because of the body roll of the car, this is going to be moving out this way, going towards positive camber, which is not what you want. A dual arm car has two of these at different lengths, which means as you push this up, it tilts in to counteract the positive camber force of the body roll. No such luck here. This is basically just going to go straight up and down. The only thing that's going to affect the angle is this right here. And once you get this to level, that's as good as it's going to get. Because if you keep going up, which I can't do right now because I'll just lift the car, but if you keep going up, it's just going to get further out as it goes. The reason for that is the effective length of this arm gets smaller as you get higher and higher into the arc. So that wheel is going to keep going further and further and further out, compounded by the body roll, which is going to make it go even further positive camber, and you're going to have a really bad handling car. But if you look at a race car that has a strut type suspension, they might have in excess of 4 degrees negative camber static. It's not because they want that much camber, it's because they literally have to counteract all these other weird things going on in the geometry here. I'm not going to go quite that far in this car, but I'm definitely going to have to do some trickery in here to get some better geometry out of it. So we'll see where we go with that. And let's take a look at the rear suspension. This is live axle. Oh man, the pinnacle of performance engineering in 1953. All jokes aside, what this actually is a 3-link live axle rear end. There are different types, and yes, they do behave differently. So this is called a 3-link because it has this whole big chungus unit here. This is the axle housing. So technically the axles are in there and in there. And this big piece right here, that's the differential. This car does come from the factory with a clutch type LSD, although they're not very good. The links are these pieces here. There's one. That's the lower control arm for the right hand side, and there's a similar one on the left. And then if we make our way above the housing, that's the 3rd link. So there's one right in the middle of the top, and 2 either side of the bottom. And as you can see here, it does use coil springs. This is not a leaf spring design like the older ones were. So that's kind of good, I guess. At least it makes it a little bit easier to tune it. So the angle of those arms in conjunction with each other creates the rear geometry for the live axle. Kind of, if you think about the upper arm here and the lower arms here, this is what's going to play a big role. And that can change the moment that the force or the torque of the engine is being actually applied to the chassis, which can have a big impact on how much it's going to squat, and therefore your forward bite. If the moment is right here, it's probably not going to transfer very much weight to the back, and you might have a very loose car when you get on the gas. If it's way over there, it's going to have a lot of leverage and pick up the whole front end of the car, and that might pick it up too much and then create an understeer situation coming out of corners. The right spot's probably somewhere in the middle, and it depends on how much power you have and how much grip you have in the tires. Somewhere in there, you'll find a good setup. This piece here, that's the panhard bar. So that's what's going to prevent the axle from moving that way and that way. So that's a pretty important job. You don't want the whole axle shifting left and right while you're driving, especially if you're cornering with high loads. Now the problem with a panhard bar is that it's just a simple bar, and it's going to travel on an arc. So on this side, right here, and on this side, right here, it's got 2 pivot points. So you see the angle that it's at right now? At any given ride height, that's going to be at a specific angle, either higher or lower. Well, if you lower the car, suddenly it's at a different angle. And keep in mind, because it's pivoting, it's going along an arc. So that means, depending on the ride height, the axle is going to shift to the left or to the right. Yeah, these weren't really designed with performance or modification in mind. But there are solutions. A common solution for these cars, and actually my RX-7 already has one of these from the factory, is called a Watts link. And that uses some trickery where it bolts to the housing right here, and it's got a little twisty doohickey, but I'm not going to do that, at least not yet. What I'm going to do is an adjustable panhard bar. So if you change the right height of the car, which I'm going to do, you can then lengthen or shorten it so that it gets it kind of back where it was supposed to be. Yeah, there are reasons that solid axle cars are known for not being the most precise on track, shall we say, and it's not just from unsprung weight, although that is a factor. I mean, look at this thing. It's quite a bit different from tuning the cars that I'm used to, but, you know, I like a new challenge. So, here's the plan. Get attacked by a puppy. This car is slow, and it handles like crap. Hello. I want to make it less slow and handle not like crap. And I'm going to issue a challenge to everybody watching this, specifically those of you who are in California. My goal is to make this car go sub-2 at Buttonwillow as cheaply as possible. That's the 13CW specifically, so no shenanigans on different configurations. I don't want you to try it too. Not just with the Mustang, any car. I mean, anything. The weirder, the better. I want to see who can go around Buttonwillow sub 2 minutes for the cheapest possible. I'm not saying that I think this car is going to be the best for that exact challenge. Oh, Jesus. I don't know if it's going to be the best for that challenge. I think maybe like some Civic, older Civic or Miata or something might do it a little better, or maybe like a non-AMI 36 or something like that. Not better, but cheaper. But I'm still going to give it a shot. And I want everybody to participate because I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I'll have to come up with some rules for like used parts versus new parts. Obviously, there's got to be some kind of discount for used parts. We'll figure that out. Actually, you know what? If you got ideas on that, just add those to the comments. Ow. It's got to be, you know, if you get like a $100 M3 from your buddy, that doesn't count, obviously. It's got to be like market value of the car. For instance, this car cost me $6,000. So you can definitely get a car a lot cheaper than that, but you're not going to have a 300 horsepower V8, which is definitely going to be very helpful. So if you buy a $2,000 Miata, yes, you've got a whole lot of money left over before you get to the $6,000 mark for this car. But then again, you've got a 100 horsepower engine, so it's always going to be give and take. I'm thinking for tires, or maybe just for all parts. Like let's talk tires specifically. If you buy a set of like Federals, and you realize, okay, you're going to need something more expensive, more grippy than that, you don't have to add the price of the Federals, and also whatever you end up with, just whatever tires you were on to set the time. That's the one that's going to count towards the final price. And the same should go for parts. Like if you start with just like cut springs and those are free, and realize, okay, that's not going to do it, then you buy some like $800 coilovers. Wait, that's a terrible example. If you start with $800 coilovers and realize that's not going to do it, and then you end up with some like $2,000 coilovers, you don't have to do $2,800. It would just be $2,000. You get the point. It's really difficult to focus on what I'm saying. You're a monster. You make this so hard, but you're so cute. Oh god, my notes are over there. Hold on. Ugh. What else did I write on here? I actually cover everything. What do you know? Okay, so let me show you what I got for the car so far. Move. It's a radiator. Apparently cooling is kind of a big deal on these cars. They build a lot of heat, and they do not get rid of that heat. I might end up having to do, I might end up having to do hood vents or something like that to get some of the heat out of the engine bay. But for now, I'm going with this. It's just a larger, very inexpensive radiator. It's aluminum. I don't know what the capacity is. Bigger than stock. Also, I get like a little hint of ode to BMW coming out from under the hood sometimes when I drive the car. So I'm hoping that goes away when I put this in. There's also like kind of a ticking noise while the engine's running, which I'm sure that's not going to come back to bite me. All right, so that's that. Hold on. Ta-da! Apex wheels. I forget the model name of these. Sorry, Joe. They're 18 by 10s, and I do not think that is necessarily the best cost for speed that I'm going to get. But, again, I don't think that this entire thing is going to be the absolute best. I think people can do way better than what I'm doing, and I just think they're nice wheels. So, yeah. I've got some other wheels, too. Maybe for the actual challenge, I'll put my smaller ones on. My 17 by 9s or something like that. I think those are cheaper. Tires are cheaper anyway. But anyway, Apex wheels. They make it really easy. They have a chart that shows fitment for specific cars, including the S197. So I didn't even have to think about it. I just called Joe and said, "Hey Joe, I need wheels." And he sent me these. Nice. Okay, pilot parts. So thank you to my buddy Tony for providing me access to all this stuff. It's a bunch of used S197 parts. Camber plates. Are they okay? Do you approve? Thank you. Camber plates to try to get some more out of the front end. Yes, we've seen them. Try to get a little more camber out of the front end. Get some more front end grip. We have Ford Performance lowering springs. Going a little ghetto on this. Might end up going for something a little better later on, but I'll try this to start off with. That's a front. That's a rear. That's a bit of plant life that came free with the springs. I'll put that back. We have a front sway bar. A rear sway bar, I assume. Bilstein shocks. These are for the back. And replacement struts. Also Bilstein. Adjustable end links, so that once I mess with the ride height. Do you mind? Excuse me. So once I adjust the ride height, So once I adjust the ride height, I can set the height on these so that I don't have any kind of preload in the sway bars. This one right here is panhard bar, adjustable. So when the ride height changes, I can fix the geometry as fixed as it will ever be, hopefully, with this. I have no idea what this is. So anyway, I paid $500 for this pile of parts. Again, I don't know exactly what the rule should be on used parts because, I mean, what if you just like, just take it? Okay, well, what if somebody said, just take it to like a Garrett turbocharger kit, right? So there's got to be some rules there. Maybe like 50% of retail or something like that. I don't know. Again, give me ideas in the comments. We'll come up with it together. So anyway, that's what's happening next. Wheels, suspension, brake pads. Waiting on my brake pads still, and brake fluid. And then tires. I'm probably going to start with just some Federal RS Pros or something like that, which are really, really affordable. They're not the grippiest tire, obviously, but they're a good starting point. Anyway, we'll go from there. Thank you again. Comment below what kind of car you want to do, and join in on this challenge with me. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you. Bye.